Required listening with Amazon Music.
Dad music again?
The greatest guitarist of all time.
Wait, who?
Alexa, add this song to a new playlist.
Sure, what's the new playlist name?
Jack's Intro to Classic Rock.
Adding Stepping Stone by Jimi Hendrix to Jack's Intro to Classic Rock playlist.
Amazon Music, the simplest way to listen to the music you and soon he will love. New customers start your 30-day free trial at amazonmusic.com. Renews automatically, cancel anytime.
You're locked into Inception Radio Network, Superior, Wisconsin.
You're tuned in to NightVision Radio, exposing the truth one secret at a time. Prepare yourself as we explore the shadow worlds of suppressed history, secret knowledge, forbidden religion, and shine a light on the conspiracies to keep it all from us. Welcome to NightVision Radio. Welcome to NightVision, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. I'm excited about tonight's show. It's a subject that so many of us are interested in. But before I get into introducing my really special guest tonight, I just want to take a quick moment to commemorate the passing of a very, very, very dear friend of mine just last week. In fact, 1 week ago today. All you Rennies out there, all you followers of the Wren Mysteries, may know of David Pickering, and he was the editor of the Saunier Society newsletter, and he also sat on the board of the Henry Lincoln Archive with me and with David and his wife Jeannie and with Sarah McMeekin, and we were charged with gathering up all the life work of Henry Lincoln, author Henry Lincoln, and putting it into a database which David created. And it is going to be a lasting legacy for everyone. The original archive materials would be placed in a museum. I believe it's going in Amsterdam. But the archive itself will eventually be put online for the use of everyone who is interested in these mysteries. And if you all know, Henry Lincoln is an amazing author, but he was one of the co-authors of the blockbuster hit in 1982, Holy Blood, Holy Grail, that sort of kicked off the whole Da Vinci Code mystery era that continues to this day. And David passed last week. He leaves his wonderful and beautiful and loving wife, Jeannie, and we're going to miss him so much. We just can't afford to lose good men like that. My goodness gracious. And way, way, way too soon did he leave us. Just want to say, David, we wish you well, and we know you're watching over us. We love you. All right. Now, another commemoration I'd like to make on this day is that it is International Women's Day. And I'm very excited to have a very interesting woman on my show tonight. And I think that's very appropriate that we definitely have the feminine represented here tonight. And my guest tonight is an animal communicator. She's also a former cop, which is kind of interesting. And I'm going to get into that and how actually her police work sort of facilitated her animal communication work that she's doing today. We'll find out how that all got started. But I'd like to introduce the author of Hear All Creatures, The Journey of an Animal Communicator, and The Amazing Afterlife of Animals, Messages and Signs from Our Pets on the Other Side. Karen Anderson, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Well, hi, and thank you so much for having me here. I'm just really been looking forward to this.
Well, I guess I should mention my colleague and fellow host, radio host, Kevin Cook, who recommended you to me, and I'm so excited and happy that he did. And I did get your books, and they're really interesting. And I have to say, you've got the endorsements of some pretty impressive people here, and your work is very, very well known in what you do with Animal Communications, but that's not how you started out, or at least I would imagine you were kind of doing some animal communicating all your life, but you used to be a former police officer.
That's right. That's kind of where it all started to really come together for me, and I really didn't, grow up thinking, I'm going to be a pet psychic someday. That just wasn't in my thought process. Nor did I grow up thinking, I'm going to be a cop someday. But lo and behold, both of those things happened to me. No, actually, as far back as I can remember, animals have been my best friends, my childhood pets. I just loved them. I could understand them and relate to them more than people when I was a little kid. And truly, it has continued throughout my entire life, and obviously it's now the work that I do. But, as a small child, I could understand the pets that I had on a level of, 5 or 6-year-old child at the time, certainly not what I do now. But I think we all have this ability. Children are great at picking up on things, and they're very intuitive, and they're very psychically inclined. And I think our society and sometimes our family or our belief systems within the family will shut that down. And that's what happened to me. I kind of got shut down. My parents didn't know what to do with me, that I knew stuff about the family pets that I shouldn't know, and it kind of freaked them out a little bit. So it's like, Karen, you got to stop talking to the dog. We don't know what to do with you. They said I had an overactive imagination. And my mother to this day will deny that, but that's definitely what she said.
Oh, that's funny. I can imagine, it might be a little unnerving if your child was saying, well, the dog says this or that. Probably would be kind of interesting. But now, I know I was reading in your book, you told a story, and I think it was actually something that you had quoted from your previous book about how you were on a crime scene, and you were actually looking for a suspect. And a cat actually led you to the suspect. Can you tell that story?
Yes, actually, that was one of the first times that I put the two things together, my psychic work and law enforcement. So the story is, I used to be a deputy in Bailey, Colorado. It's Park County. And if any of your listeners know the show South Park on Comedy Central, that's based on South Park County. So I worked for Park County. I just worked in the northern part of the district. So South Park is a real place for all of those of you who know the show. And in fact, when I would take people to jail, there's a little sign on the side of the road that says, "Welcome to South Park," and it has all the cartoon characters on the sign. But anyway, I was a deputy there, and I had been taking a statement from a victim who had been involved in a situation of domestic violence where her boyfriend at the time had abused her. And I was standing in the front yard. It was at night, so it was dark, and there were two other officers that were on scene that were looking for the suspect who took off on foot. So I was standing in front of the house with the victim, and I was just getting her statement, and the area where we were had supposedly been searched already, that the suspect was not in that area, and so it was safe for us to be there. Obviously, you wouldn't have the victim somewhere where it wasn't safe. And so I was standing there taking her statement, and a little kitty comes sauntering out of the house. And being a cat lover, of course, I noticed the cat, and I was like, "Oh, the kitty, oh," and I was just talking about how cute the kitty was. Well, the kitty looked right at me, looked right over at this little shed, like a little tool shed, like one of those little garden things you put the lawnmower in and stuff like that, looked right back at me and said, "Inside." And I thought, what? Now, I didn't ask it anything. I was just telling it how cute it was, and oh my gosh, I love cats, and aren't you cute? And I heard the words inside. Well, all of a sudden it occurred to me, oh my gosh, what if the suspect is in there? And we could all be at risk here because obviously he was violent, and so I had to do something about it. So I sent the victim off to a safe place, and I came back around to this shed, and I ordered this. To my knowledge, there wasn't anyone in there. I ordered them out with their hands up, and sure enough, here he comes. The suspect had been hiding in the shed the whole time, right where we were in an area that had previously been searched.
Oh my gosh.
So that was the first time that happened. It was very in the moment, in that right there, I wasn't trying to do anything. It just happened, like
yes.
right in that moment. And that's when it hit me, like, oh my gosh, can animals on crime scenes tell me information about what happened or things about a suspect? And that's when I kind of had that light bulb moment, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. I was shocked. I couldn't believe what was happening.
That is amazing. Now, did the cat get a commendation? Or did you keep that to yourself?
No. I gave it to the kitty, of course.
That's great. You know, in your latest book about animals and their afterlife, you actually communicate with people's beloved animals after they passed on, which, you know, I mean, I can imagine, you know, that I've had some animals. I have 2 dogs right now, and they're just my heart, you know, and I have kids too and grandkids, but, you know, my dogs are a part of the family. And, you know, it's heartbreaking because we always lose our pets because they don't live as long as we do. And I guess that's so that, you know, we live long enough to take care of them and make sure that they're okay before they pass on to the other side. But I've lost some amazing, amazing pets that just absolutely, you know, broke my heart when they had to go. So I can imagine how many people must come to you to try to communicate with animals that they've lost. Have you, do you recall the first time you had that experience with a pet that had actually passed over and were able to give a message to someone?
Well, you know, I don't know if I remember the specific instance because I've been doing this, René, for a long time now, over 20 years. So that's a lot.
That's a lot.
That's a long time. A lot of sessions, and but what I do know, and the reason why I was compelled to write the book, is I have clients contact me for all different reasons: behavior resolution, health concerns, end of life concerns, finding out if their pet is really ready to pass, because you know that's sometimes a roller coaster ride, and it's so confusing to know when they're ready. And I found that when I would have a session with a client when we were connecting with their pet on the other side, when I delivered those messages to them, I saw how much healing took place and how years and years of pain and grief and guilt would just melt away just with one simple message. And that's why I wanted to write this book and share the stories and the messages from the animals that I've communicated with, because it is so amazing what they know about us even after they've passed on. You think, okay, well, what can they possibly know, right? You name it, they can know it. Anything from what you had for breakfast this morning to you're thinking about taking a trip to Hawaii or maybe even changing jobs or moving. Any thought that you have, anything that goes through your mind, anything you experience, they can share that with me. And that's really powerful to know that our pets stay connected to us even when they are in spirit form. That's how much they love us.
Absolutely. And, you know, it's wonderful to think that, you know, just like, you know, hopefully we'll be connected with our family and other loved ones that have passed over, we'll also connect again with our pets at some point on the other side.
Well, I don't want to go there if they're not there.
I don't either. Yeah, that wouldn't be heaven without the animals, would it?
No, not in my opinion.
I think the Pope has declared that animals go to heaven, or that we will meet our beloved pets when we go to heaven. So I'm going to choose to believe that the Pope on this instance, not on every instance, but in this instance, I do want to believe the Pope that we will be reunited with our loving pets on the other side. Now, you mentioned a story. You were just talking about how when you are able to deliver these messages, or when people get messages from their pets that have passed on, it will be a way of helping the grief to heal. And you, as you said, it just melts away. And in your book, you talked about a woman. Now, I think this was a woman that you might have been teaching communication to, or helping her to communicate. And I believe it was a cat named Vito that she was connecting with. And they had, she and her husband were a service family or something like that. They had to move away, could not take the animal, so they had to leave it behind with someone else. And the cat was just heartbroken, and they were guilt-ridden. And then the cat ends up running away, and they never knew what happened. But can you talk a little bit about how they were able to communicate with their cat, and what the cat was able, that cat communication was able to do for them?
Yeah, we were at an animal communication workshop that I was teaching, and in the workshops we do practice sessions where you bring a photo of your pets, living or deceased, and then other students practice on your pets, and then we share what we get. Or we go around the room and everybody shares what they get from each animal. And in that case, Vito was one of the pictures that this one client was practicing with, and all of a sudden, René, she just started bawling, just tears, sobbing. And, of course, all of us are like, oh, my gosh, what's wrong? And she says, I don't know what's wrong. I'm so sad. I just can't stop crying. She got this overwhelming sense of sadness and sorrow, but she couldn't tell us why. So I saw what was going on, and I asked Vito's dad, who was there at the workshop, if I could check in with Vito and see what was going on. Well, it turned out that, like you said, they had been shipped overseas, both of them. They had to leave Vito behind. So a friend took the cat, and Vito, within a few weeks of going to the friend's house, bolted out the door, disappeared. Nobody ever saw him again, and this poor family was guilt-ridden, like they had abandoned their child and they couldn't go look for it, and they felt horrible. For years and years and years, they carried this grief around. Everybody carried this grief around. And what happened was I was able to bring Vito's energy. The deceased cat was named Vito. I was able to bring his energy in and explain what happened. Vito wanted to know why his mom and dad left him, didn't come looking for him. There were so many unanswered questions. I was able to explain to the cat what happened, and everybody got on the same page, and it, like, right in that moment, you could see the healing that was taking place. All that pain just lifted, and all of that grief just melted away, and it was amazing. And the air got lighter in the room. It just seemed to lift this heaviness that was upon everyone. And we carry around this guilt and this pain, and sometimes the animals do, especially if things didn't end the way that we wanted them to end. And I was able to facilitate those messages and bring everybody together so everyone knew what actually happened, and it was really an incredibly healing moment.
Wow, that's incredible. And so you do workshops as well and teach other people how to communicate.
Well, I used to back in the day before the internet, and now I teach online courses.
Wow.
And I do private mentoring, one-on-one private mentoring over the phone. So, yes, there was a day when I used to fly around the U.S. and hold workshops, and now we just do online courses. And it's a self-paced course. It's designed for beginners or those who are new to the process. And within minutes of enrolling, you can be sending your very first message, because it's actually very easy to do. Once you know the steps, it's very, very simple. And yes, I love teaching others. The more people who know how to do this, the better. It raises the vibrational level of the earth. It brings a better understanding between humans and animals, and it's a win-win situation. So I love teaching. It's one of my favorite things to do.
That's great. And then you do private sessions as well. Do you do that online also? Can you do help a person with a poodle in Paris?
I do. All of my sessions are telephone sessions, and I work from a very remote home office location. I'm in eastern Washington State, a very remote area out here, and all I need is the pet's photos, and then they're human, of course, on the phone with me, and I'm able to open up to that animal's energy and translate their messages and relay messages back and forth. So that's how all my work is done, is over the phone. And it's always been that way. That's how I train myself, and that's how I've always done my work, is over the phone and with a photograph.
Oh, that's nice. And it doesn't make any difference what the distance is, I would imagine.
No, because I read energy, and energy, time and distance is not a barrier to reading energy. And I pull psychic information. I pull information from the animal's energy, and they share their messages with me, and then I relay what I'm getting from the animal to their mom or dad, whoever is on the phone with me.
Wow. Now, how did you make that jump from police work to being a professional animal communicator? When did you do that, and how did that transition come about?
Well, it was a matter of, I knew that law enforcement wasn't going to continue for me because many of you can relate to this, but I was getting older and the bad guys were getting younger. And up in the Rocky Mountains, we were at about 8,500 feet elevation, and you're carrying around 25 pounds of gear. It's not an easy job. So I came to realize that I was going to have to find something else to do, so I relocated and moved from Colorado and came to the Spokane area, and that's when I shifted gears and my psychic work became the forefront again. So it all resurfaced. I started remembering, and all started resurfacing when I was a deputy, and it was after I moved to the Spokane area where I shifted and started to devote 100% of my time, effort, and energy into animal communication. It just became a passion of mine. It's like the more I practiced with animals, the more I communicated with animals, the more I wanted to know and the more I wanted to connect. It was kind of an incredible and amazing experience I couldn't get enough of, and I wanted to learn more and more and more. So that's how it all kind of came about.
Now, being the animal lover that you are, but also being the communicator that you are, has developing these skills, and this is a stupid question, I know the answer before I even ask it, has that somehow helped you through time when you've lost pets of your own? At the time that you're losing them, is it somehow easier for you, do you think, now that you've sort of come to these realizations and this ability to communicate?
Well, I'll tell you this, it's still just as hard for me as it is for anybody else when I lose one of mine, because they're just as near and dear to me as yours are to you. So the pain is still there, but I have learned, like you said, I've learned what actually happens to our pets when they leave their body and what the experience is like. And I know that life continues for them on the other side. So in that respect, I have a greater understanding and I'm more enlightened about it than I was before I became an animal communicator. And because of that, I'm more aware of being more present with them while they're here and with me. So I have learned some really big lessons because of the work that I do. It's made me appreciate every single moment. I used to really try to extend their lives and do every last-ditch effort I could to try to keep them here. I don't do that anymore. I check in with them and I see what they want. Do they want to stay? Are they tired? Are they ready to go? Have they had a full and complete life? Do they want the surgery? Do they want to just pass on their own? I can check in with them now and really do what the animal wants. I couldn't do that before. And I think that has been probably some of the biggest lessons that I've learned and how it helps me. But certainly the pain, no, I don't get any break on the pain. I still, just like everybody else does, and I miss my babies just like everybody else misses their babies too. There's no shortcuts through that.
Absolutely. Oh, my goodness. Well, you know what? It's just about time to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to have more with Animal Communicator, Karen Anderson. It's really interesting. Everybody loves their pets. So stay with us. Welcome back to Night Vision. I'm your host, René Barnett. If you're just joining us, we're talking tonight with author and animal communicator Karen Anderson. We've been talking about communicating with our pets, both here and on the other side. Now, if I could switch it up a little bit, Karen, at the top of the show, I mentioned my friend who had passed away. And then amazingly, when I posted about this show coming on, another friend posted to me something. Now, my friend that passed away had a dog who he was incredibly close to. In fact, my friend had been suffering from cancer for about a year, and he posted his about his health to all the friends around the world, because he's in England and they have friends around the world. And he posted his health reports on Facebook on a page called Gizzy's Dad's Progress Diary, because he had his dog named Gizzy. And so I wondered, gosh, what happens when we actually precede our pets in death? And then today, in fact, Rob is in the chat room right now. A friend of the show, Rob, wrote to me and said, oh my goodness, I want to listen to the show. He said, my roommate and best friend died last week, and his dog is really, feeling it. And so what is it that we can do for animals that have lost their humans? Is there some special care? Is there, do we just talk to them? How do we do that? How do we comfort animals that have lost their humans?
Well, every pet grieves differently, just like every human being grieves differently. Some pets are very traumatized by the loss of their human, and others act as if nothing has changed. So it's a very unique and individual process. So in a situation like what you're describing with this particular situation, you can talk to a pet like you would a 7 or 8-year-old child. You just talk very short sentences, matter-of-factly, and you speak out loud or quietly in your mind. It doesn't have to be a verbal exchange, but as you are thinking or as you are talking out loud, you'll flash images in your mind. They look like little slide presentations going through your mind. And our animals can pick up on those images, those flashes. So as you talk about this particular person passing away, you would describe that to the dog, that they passed away, that they're now in spirit form. And in your mind, you're already conjuring up images of what that looks like, to be in spirit form, to not have a physical body anymore, but their energy is still around and still with you. I tell pets all the time that they can still connect with their departed human loved one, just like they did here on Earth. And then what I do is I imagine literally like overlapping their energy, just like as if you had take two beach balls, for instance, and if you were to imagine that you could just merge both of those beach balls together into one gigantic one, I bring the two energies together and I show them how they can still communicate with each other energetically, that they're still around. So you can talk to them out loud about it. And as long as you keep it simple, they'll understand it. They may not grasp the whole concept, but they'll get what you're telling them, and just reassure them that their human loved one is alive and well in spirit and always connected to them. And just sending lots of positive energy, lots of happy energy, joyful memories, all of those things can help. And they'll respond to that. They will definitely show improvement and get through their grief just like the humans do. But, each one is different, so it can take some of them a little bit of time.
Now, can that be done remotely as well?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. For instance, I'm here in Los Angeles, and Gizzy is in England, and in Selby, in Yorkshire. And can I focus on Gizzy and send him messages?
I will teach all of you right now how to send a message.
Great.
So all you have to do right now, everybody who's listening, is just think of a pet that you want to connect with. You can think of their face. You can gaze at them if they're in the room they're with you, or if you have a photo, you can look at their photo. Just conjure up a memory in your mind of whatever pet that you want to send a message to. Then the next thing you do is you think of a very simple message that you want to send them, such as a message of love. So, René, like in your case, you might want to tell this little Gizzy dog that his human daddy is okay, and on the other side. So what you do is you imagine his daddy surrounded in love, or surrounded in beautiful energy, or up in heaven, or however you want to imagine that, and just imagine that you're going to send that message to land right on Gizzy's heart, right in Gizzy's, on the top of his head, or somewhere else on his body. Just imagine you're just going to click and send that message through space and time, and it'll land right on the dog, even if it's thousands of miles away, doesn't matter. You just imagine it going through space and time instantly, like an email. Just click and send. We text message back and forth with each other every single day. Animal communication is the same way. It's instantaneous. It's back and forth, and it's instantaneous. So as soon as that thought leaves you, it'll land on the pet. The pet will get the message, and they'll usually respond. Now, our brains are usually too busy to pick up on their response. So you do have to quiet your mind, and you have to be...
Required listening with Amazon Music.
Dad music again?
The greatest guitarist of all time.
Wait, who?
Alexa, add this song to a new playlist.
Sure, what's the new playlist name?
Jack's Intro to Classic Rock.
Adding Stepping Stone by Jimi Hendrix to Jack's Intro to Classic Rock playlist.
Amazon Music, the simplest way to listen to the music you and soon he will love. New customers start your 30-day free trial at amazonmusic.com. Renews automatically, cancel anytime.
Very aware of making sure that you aren't distracted so that you can receive that incoming message, but they'll respond right away. And sometimes it'll be with a feeling of love. Like if you sent love, you'll probably get a feeling of love back. Other times, they may show you a toy or a treat or something else, food, or they want to go outside, or who knows. Animals will surprise me every time. I never know what they're going to send me. But that's how simple it is. The process of sending a message is very simple. We do this every day with everyone we're texting. You're thinking a thought in your head. You're pulling their name up in your phone. You're typing in a message, and you hit send. It's the same thing with an animal.
That's really interesting. Well, while you were doing that, I was sending Gizzy a message, so I'll ask his mom if he woke up in the middle of the night, because, of course, they're 8 hours ahead of me.
Yeah, and she'll say, René, don't send him a message when we're sleeping.
Stop doing that, René. She probably will, knowing her. But, oh, that's wonderful. I had a very interesting experience with one of my pets that I'd like your take on. I mean, not a reading, but just your opinion about. As an example, I I lost my daughter, as many of my listeners know, about 13 years ago. And so for that whole first year after my daughter passed, I really felt like my dog, Molly. I had this big Rottweiler Border Collie mix that I rescued out of the street as a little puppy. And she was probably just about 6 years old. And I really credited that dog with getting me through that whole first year, which was just horrifying. And I was invited to this event at a psychic's house here in Los Angeles, a pretty well-known psychic, a man named Brian Hurst. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he was quite well-known, and I guess still is, but certainly back, 20 years ago, he was quite well-known here in town. And so, of course, I went in the hopes of getting a message from my daughter, who had passed the year before. And he went around the room, and there was maybe 20 people. I think that's what the limit was. And he went around the room, and I was like almost one of the last people that he came upon to give a message. And he started telling me about this dog, on the other side. And of course, I did have lots of dogs on the other side, and I loved them very much. But I was kind of disappointed, that I wasn't hearing from my daughter. And he kept telling me about this dog, and I kept describing big dogs that I'd had, and he kept saying, no, that's not it. And I kind of left there a little bit confused. When I got home, pardon me for saying this, but I noticed that my dog had thrown up. And, dogs throw up. They just do. Every now and then they'll eat something weird. But for some reason, it really bothered me. And the very next morning, I took her to the vet. And the vet basically was examining the dog, pulled back her lips and looked at her gums, and he says, oh, this is not good. And I guess their gums sort of get white when they're ill. And he did some testing. Well, my dog had cancer. And you mentioned earlier in the show about how, you still grieve just as much, but what you don't do is try to keep them here. And I was so upset because I'd lost my daughter. I didn't want to lose my dog. And I had a friend that was with me, and she was saying, you've got to do everything you can to save this dog. She says, and I didn't have the money. I mean, I just, been off work for a year practically, and I was a mess. She said, listen, I have a credit card. There's nothing on it. Just use it and spend it and, pay it back. Just pay the bill. I ended up spending $8,000 for chemo and all kinds of stuff for this dog. And the dog lived for 30 days and died, in terrible pain.
Right.
And I regretted that so much. But I just thought how interesting that was, that I'd been to the psychic and he kept trying to give me this message from the dog on the other
right.
side.
Right.
And I kept trying to hook up which dog it was. And it was the dog that I still had and was getting ready to go to the other side.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty amazing. And it's true. They will let you know. I mean, they'll find a way to get a message through to you, and many of us will kind of look the other way or pretend like we don't see the signs or pretend that they're not as bad as they are. I've done it. I'm guilty. I'm totally guilty.
We all are. Yeah.
I don't do it anymore. I'm very present with my pets now, and I honor them, and I allow them to leave their body with grace and dignity, and I don't allow them to go into crisis. And that's really important. It is a personal decision. Some people say it's not right to euthanize an animal. It's not right to, decide when an animal will die or play God, if you will, if you want to call it that. And because I have communicated with so many animals, I mean, we're talking thousands and thousands and thousands of animals over the last 20 years, I've heard both sides of the story. I've heard from pets who have had to pass on their own, and I've heard from pets who have had help from their humans and the doctor euthanizing them. And because of what I have learned from them, from the pets, and what they tell me, I support euthanizing, and I'll tell you why. True, if they lived in nature, they would pass on their own. If we weren't in the picture, that's what they do out in the wild, and okay, that's great. But we are our pets' caretakers. They have entrusted us to take care of them and love them and manage them throughout their life and upon their time of transition. And I call it a time of transition because they transition out of their body and into a new form of being a spiritual being. And because we are their caretakers, we hold the responsibility of keeping them from, here comes the big word, suffering needlessly. And animals feel pain just like you and I. They hurt just like you and I. They experience good and bad days just like you and I do. And just like as a human being is preparing to leave this earth, they go through a roller coaster ride of some days are good, some days are not so good, some days are horrible, and then all of a sudden they bounce back again and they're back to their old self. And we're sitting here going, what in the world? Do I take them in? Do I not take them in? How do I know when is the right time to euthanize? And it's a very difficult decision. I call it the impossible decision in my book, is what I call it, the impossible decision. And the animals tell me, those who have passed on their own, tell me without a doubt they suffered. Death is ugly. Death is not pain-free. The body tries to live. The heart tries to beat. The lungs try to get oxygen. The blood tries to pump. The body is trying to live, and there is a struggle that goes on. And as a former police officer, I have seen a lot of death, and I've seen a lot of dying. And I can tell you just firsthand, it is not pretty. And to put our animals through something like that, I just can't do it. And I won't do it for my own. Everyone can make their own decision, and that's fine, and I respect that, and I don't frown upon anyone who chooses otherwise. But I can tell you that the animals who have transitioned on their own without the help of a human, they tell me unequivocally that they experience, in some cases, a tremendous amount of pain, discomfort, and agony. Whereas those who we help transition with euthanizing, they have a much more peaceful, calm transition. And basically pain-free. I won't say pain-free because that's not true. Euthanasia, when they euthanize, it stings. It is, they can feel it, and it stings. And they'll sometimes cry out, and or they'll yowl or yelp because it burns. So that part of it isn't pleasant, but very shortly after that, once it enters into the bloodstream, of course, then they're gone. But I'll tell you, because of what the animals explained to me after the fact, that there's far less pain, struggle when they've been euthanized, I will support that, and I will continue to euthanize my own pets when it's appropriate. And if they choose to pass on their own, great. I have only had that happen on 2 occasions in all the years I've had pets, and I live on a farm, so I have a lot of animals. But we all want them to pass peacefully in their sleep at night. That would be the best way.
Yeah.
And it just has never happened to me. I've almost always had to help my pets make their transition, and it's not fun. Nobody wants to do that. I don't want to do it.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say all this because, I felt a tremendous sense of, of course I didn't want to lose my dog, but also I felt like I got to do everything I can, to save her. And, and of course I was sort of egged on by my friend who was saying, you've got to do everything. And I felt like if I didn't do it, I would, it was like, oh, I'm just getting rid of her, So I'm glad to hear you say that. That'll make the next time I have to make that decision a little bit easier. Never going to be easy.
Right.
Never going to be easy.
It's never easy, but knowing that, we're already extending their lives. I want you to think about this for a minute. We have already extended their lives because of our love and our care. So just by them being with us, we have extended their lives in most cases. I mean, sometimes things happen and accidents happen or whatever, or diseases hit them or whatever. But in the average case, because we have loved them, cared for them so much, we have already extended their physical life. So they're here longer than they would have been if we weren't in the picture. So then we go to these additional lengths, surgeries and whatever, and we keep dragging it on, and they don't want to. They're really good. They're like, you know what, I lived a great life, and we had a great time, and I'm old and I'm tired and I don't need to be here anymore. Now, in some cases, I will say, especially if the animal is younger and they have their whole life ahead of them, I mean, in certain cases, I'm going to opt for a surgery. I'm going to opt for a chemotherapy. I'm going to opt for that, whatever the procedure is. Absolutely. But when you're talking about an aging dog or an aging cat or an aging horse, or if you're talking about something that you're stacked up against the age, really think about it and think about the quality of that animal's life, and spending thousands and thousands of dollars. Not all of us can do that. It's not always possible, but please don't feel bad if you cannot spend thousands of dollars to save your pet. Please don't feel that way. The animals, I'll tell you what, here's another little inside story for you. Not even one time have I ever heard an animal tell me that their human took their life too soon.
Wow.
Not once.
That's
you want to
amazing.
know what? The animals tell me their human waited too long. I hear that one.
Wow, well, that's great to know. That's great to have that knowledge the next time that experience presents itself. Unfortunately, I'm sure that it will, because I can't be without my animals.
I know, and you know what, though? We would all go through it again. We would do it again in a heartbeat. We would go through the pain, we'd go through the grief, we'd go through the loss and the aching and the overwhelming grief that we feel. I would do it again in a heartbeat to be with my animals again. I'm sure everybody listening would go through it again. I have some clients, though, that will try to beat themselves up and say, I don't deserve to get another pet, they feel so bad and feel so guilty. And I'll tell you, the number one thing that you can do to help your pet right now, whether it's living or deceased, is to let go of your guilt. Guilt is a human trait. Animals don't carry guilt. They don't understand guilt. Guilt is very confusing to a pet. They know that they're making you upset, but they don't get it. They don't get why you're upset. They think they made you upset. So guilt doesn't serve anyone. So for everyone, I'm guilty of carrying guilt for a long time, years and years and years, for things that happened that, decisions I didn't make at the right time, that sort of thing, not opting for a surgery or whatever it was. I've done all of those things in the past. But it really doesn't serve anyone. We can't go back and change the past, number one. The animals never bring it up, number two. And number three, they don't understand guilt. All they know is that you're upset, and they think they're responsible for making you upset. They don't understand what this thing is called guilt.
Wow. Well,
it's a human concept.
You said that, you've often heard them say, I'm ready to go. I want to go. I'm tired. I'm ready to give up this life. Now, do the animals understand that there is an afterlife? Do they say, I want to go to be, free again? Or do they just know they're tired and don't feel well?
There seems to be a difference between each individual animal. Some seem to be very aware that their journey continues on the other side, And then others seem to be completely clueless, and they really don't have a clue, and I have to fill them in about what's coming up. But the one thing that runs true for every animal is that they're very accepting of the dying process, and they're very accepting of death. Now, in saying that, I want to make it very clear here that there is no animal that wants to die. Animals don't commit suicide. Humans commit suicide, and it's not of an animal's nature to want to die or to try to take their own life. They just don't do it. They want to be here, but they only want to be here in a way that they are living. And when they get older or when they're riddled with disease or whatever, they don't consider that living, and they're just tired and they just want to leave their body. So, no, they don't all understand that life goes on, but they don't stress out about it like we do. They don't worry about, oh my gosh, am I going to die? Oh my gosh. What they get stressed out about is when their human stresses out about them and them dying. Then they get stressed. But they're getting stressed from you. They're not getting stressed because they're dying. They just know that you're freaked out about something. So, then they're going to freak out about it. So your thoughts are very powerful when it comes to your own pets and how you handle the end of their life and how you handle managing them and hospicing them. Your thoughts are very, very powerful. And you can really create a safe and comfortable and peaceful environment for them to live out their final hospice days with you, or you can be stressed out and feel guilty and have all of these horrible, I'm a bad mom, or I'm a bad dad, or I didn't do this, or I didn't do that. I mean, think about that, weigh that out, and look at how powerful that is, that you can either create this nice environment for them, like, I loved you your whole life, I took care of you, I rescued you, I fed you, I medicated you, and now I'm here to help you leave your body as peacefully and with as much dignity as I can. Animals don't want anyone to see them when they are in a state of dying. That is a sign of weakness in the animal kingdom. And out in the wild, out in nature, they go and hide. They go off by themselves. So to be surrounded by humans is kind of against nature. It's not what they do in the wild. They'll go off by themselves. I have clients tell me, well, my elderly cat disappeared. My elderly dog ran off. We've never seen him again. Well, they go off somewhere to die. And that's normal for an animal. They don't want us hovering around them. And I'll give you a perfect example here. Are we okay on time? I don't know when the next break is.
Well, we're actually just about ready to take a break. If you maybe we'll just go ahead and take it now, and we'll start with that story when we come back. All right, everyone, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, more with Night Vision and Karen Anderson, Animal Communicator. Stay with us. Welcome back to Night Vision. I'm your host, René Barnett. We're talking with Karen Anderson. She's an animal communicator and an author. Been talking about her latest book called The Amazing Afterlife of Animals. And it is messages and signs from our pets on the other side. Really, really interesting stuff. I mean, you were getting ready to tell a story, and then I have another question for you. But you were just before the break, you started to tell something, and we decided we didn't want to break it in the middle. So, what were you going to share with us, Karen?
I have no idea what I.
Oh my gosh! You're not going to depend on me, I hope. All right,
I can't remember what I was. I don't remember. Maybe it'll surface again.
Yeah, so much.
I don't remember what it was. But during the break, we were talking about how the process is the same to communicate with your departed humans. It's the exact same process. You send a message the same way. Out your thoughts, they can pick up on your thoughts, so you don't have to say it out loud, but you can say messages out loud. Our human loved ones are almost always around us. They're not 100% around us because they go do other things. They don't follow us around sort of thing, but they certainly pop in and out, and they know what's going on in our lives. And here's what happened to me. I was doing a pet session one time. I had never communicated with a departed human before, and all of a sudden this pet pet brought through these two humans. And I didn't know what to do with that because I was like, oh my gosh, there's two humans here. So it really caught me by surprise, and I didn't know that if I opened up the energy, so to speak, to communicate with a pet, that they would bring through humans. So it was very surprising for me. But the process is exactly the same, and I will often hear from the departed pets that they are with our departed human loved ones in the same family group or soul group.
Wow. You know, when I did finally put my dog Molly down, the one that had cancer, when we were, I was there with her, and the vet and I both were telling her, go find Jolie. That's my daughter's name. And I really felt like they did find each other.
Oh, absolutely. And I was just going to write to somebody here. Terrence in the chat room was asking, I wonder if we get reunited with our pets when we pass. Absolutely. They will be there waiting for us. You know, we've all heard the story about the Rainbow Bridge. Well, that's kind of true. Some of it isn't, but it's very similar to that. Now, in the Rainbow Bridge story, for those of you who don't know what it is, there's supposedly this mythical place where our pets reside, and they wait for us when we die, and they're there in this field, and they come running, and it's all wonderful, and we get reunited. Well, that's kind of similar to what it is, but the only difference is, in my experience, of course, this is based on my experience from my work, is that they're not in a separate place. They're with our family. They're with our loved ones, and they can come and go. They pop in and out, and they can go do different things. They can be in more than one place at one time. Energy is not bound like a human body. We can only be in one place at one time. An energetic being can split that energy and be in different places at the same time. So that's the main difference between the Rainbow Bridge story and what I've experienced is that, yes, they are there to greet us when we pass, and of course they are. They want to be with us. They love us, and that love just keeps growing. The bonds of love never die. So yes, they will be there.
You know, I've noticed that, as I've matured in age and, just in life, that my animals have become more important, and I'm more cognizant of them as feeling beings. And I noticed that, in certain parts of the country and maybe in the past, people, they loved their animals and they loved their dogs, but it was still like, oh, it's just a dog. I even had someone say that to me after I lost Molly. I was just devastated, and she said, well, it's just a dog. And I thought, oh my God, how could she say that to me? And I noticed, yeah, it's like, I feel like, now I don't know if this is true, but I feel like as I have hopefully evolved as a person, that I've also evolved more into understanding and empathy with all living creatures. And I feel like as a people, as a society, that we've sort of gone more in that direction, that we have become more aware. Do you feel that's true?
I do. And just in the last 20 years that I've been doing this, when I first started communicating with animals, I was like one of 3 people out there. I mean, it was a very small pool. No one had even heard of us, and it was kind of thought of as weird and bizarre, and oh my gosh, there's no such thing, and that can't be. And I mean, I was up against so much negativity. It was ridiculous. And now it's like we have, psychic mediums in our living room doing celebrity readings, and we have all of these TV shows about mediums, and it's in our home and it's in our lives, and it's becoming more and more acceptable, and that in turn makes what I do more acceptable. I think I'm still a little bit behind that curve as far as you don't see as many Animal Communicator shows out there as you do medium shows. I wish they would do more Animal Communicator shows, but it's very draining work. I don't know that everybody understands how draining this work is. It is extremely difficult sometimes to get the messages across. And other times it's real easy. It just depends on who you're communicating with. Just like if you were to have a conversation with, let's say, 10 random strangers, just pick 10 strangers and try to have a conversation with them, you're going to have some that are really good communicators. They're very articulate. They can speak very directly and get a message across, and you're going to have some that are not. They are shy or reserved or conservative, or they just don't want to talk to you. Very difficult to get messages through. And then you're going to have some that are in the middle. So that's what it's like for a medium like myself, an animal communicator, because I also communicate with departed humans, of course, so I am a medium. It's very draining. We have to try to pull their energy to us and pull this information out of their energy, their aura, which is all around them. Sometimes it's real easy. Other times it's not. It's very, very draining. So people who do this work, we have to find a balance, and we have to recharge our batteries. We have to take breaks. We have to step away from it. We have to bring balance into our lives and stay very grounded, because it does take up so much of our energy. Now, the mediums that are out there that you're seeing on TV, please don't think it's lickety-split like they show it. You know how much they've edited those shows? You have no idea how much they have edited those shows.
Oh, yes, I do. Yes, I do.
So much.
I'm a television producer, so I know exactly how it works.
Okay. So there's, hours and hours of stuff that you don't even see, the preparation that goes into it. There's so much that goes into it. When I have a session with a client, before they even call me, I have already connected with their pets, and I have already done an entire meditation session where I have already figured out what's going on with the pet, what the areas are that we need to talk about, areas to help the client resolve, or whatever it is. I've already spent so much time with their pet before they even pick up the phone and dial in. And now that's me. That's my style. That's how I do this work. But it's very, very draining, because we're putting ourselves out there, our energy out there, to be able to pull this energy back in, to be able to share it with you. So I don't even know where I was going with that, but I got lost in that story.
I tell you, you were talking about energy, and on the break, I often say that some of the most interesting information sometimes comes out during the break, because I get so into the subject matter that I just continue talking, and getting more information during the break time. But you were talking to me about how, you can set up a situation to communicate if you're trying to communicate yourself either with a human or with an animal, I'm guessing, because it takes a lot of energy for them to get a message to us, that we can provide them fuel in certain ways. Could you explain that again so that the listeners can know? Maybe they might be trying to communicate with someone or one of their loving pets. And,
yes, absolutely. And this is everyone has a different way of helping to bring about the best possible communication. Any communicator has their process, and this is
required listening with Amazon Music.
Dad music again?
The greatest guitarist of all time.
Wait, who?
Alexa, add this song to a new playlist.
Sure, what's the new playlist name?
Jack's Intro to Classic Rock.
Adding Stepping Stone by Jimi Hendrix to Jack's Intro to Classic Rock playlist.
Amazon Music, the simplest way to listen to the music you and soon he will love. New customers start your 30-day free trial at amazonmusic.com. Renews automatically, cancel anytime.
the process that I've used and I've created over the years, and it's what works for me. It may be a little bit different for everyone else, so feel free to substitute if there's something else you prefer. But what I do is I create an environment in my office where I do all my sessions, where I provide the animals and the human spirits fuel to be able to come through to me with as much clarity as possible. Now, think about how difficult it would be to get a message through if you don't have a body. They are made up of pure energy. So the easiest thing for them to manipulate is energy. So electronic equipment is their friend. They are able to manipulate lights. You'll hear about lights flicking on and off, TVs turning on and off, microwaves, cell phones, all kinds of stuff. Electronic equipment will do weird things when there's spirit activity. It's easy for them to manipulate because they are pure energy. So in my office, I provide them with a source of fuel. I have, of course, electronic equipment in my office. I also provide a water fountain. So moving water, running water is a great source of energy. Haunted, paranormally active locations are usually near moving water. It's a great conductor of energy. Crystals, such as quartz, there are all kinds of wonderful crystals that you can charge in the sunlight or the moonlight that can provide energy that they can draw from. You can also use plain old batteries, just a gigantic multi-pack of batteries from Costco provides fuel. For instance, I'm also a paranormal investigator, and when I go on investigations, when we can go into a paranormally active location, we'll all put brand new batteries in our equipment, our cell phones, our recorders, our cameras, and as soon as we walk into the haunted or paranormal location, all of our batteries go dead. They pull the energy right out of those batteries. So you can provide a source of fuel in your home if you want to have communication with your loved one. Now, you can't just expect them to, move the ceiling fan and do all these things. It's very subtle what they'll do. Sometimes it's hard for even me to see it. So you really have to pay attention and ask them to give you a sign. And also I have to just put in here a little disclaimer. You have to be careful who you invite into your home. Make sure that you're being very clear on who you want to come through, and you're only going to allow your loved ones through. Don't just open the door and say, "Ooh, any spirit out there can come in." Don't do that. Be very clear about who you are inviting in, because you don't want to invite the wrong ones in. And I sage my office space. I burn sage, and I burn Palo Santo, which is a holy wood that helps clear out negative energies. And there's a process to do that. But those are some things that you can do at home to encourage spirit communication, but just be very clear that you're only inviting your loved ones.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. You don't want to just leave an open door. I have an open door policy there.
No, don't do that. I had someone in chat ask me what's the difference between a communicator and a medium. Well, an animal communicator obviously communicates and translates messages back and forth between animals and humans, and a medium translates departed human messages. So I am able to connect with humans who have crossed over, just like I do with animals who have crossed over, and I can relay those messages back and forth. And the interesting thing is the difference between communicating with an animal versus communicating with a human is the human vibrates at a higher speed. So it's a little bit harder, or in some cases it's a lot harder, to hear their messages because they're vibrating faster. So the messages go by really fast, where an animal's message will go by slower, much like the blades of a fan spinning on high versus low. So that's the difference. The process to connect is the same, and the intention is always, you have to put your intention, like I said, don't just invite every spirit in the world to come visit you and manifest in your living room. Don't do that. And I'm very specific as to who I invite in. And I have a process that I use, and I cleanse my office, and I sage, and I smudge, and I do all the stuff I'm supposed to do. I do a prayer of protection. I do a blessing. I'm very, very methodical about my process. And you should be too, because you don't want to invite the wrong energies in.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's really interesting. And you were talking about using items that can provide energy, like electronic equipment, but you also talked about things like crystals, and then you mentioned about putting a wind chime up in an area where there is not any draft or something else that is hanging there that can be easily moved because they, as you said, it takes a lot of energy for them to interact with us on this plane. So these are all things that we can use as in terms of communicating with humans as well as animals.
Absolutely. And, usually what animals will do, and here's how you can tell the difference. Animals will usually be in their same places that were their favorite places when they were here in life. So on the bed or next to your feet or wherever they hung out when they were alive, that's generally where they will hang out once they have crossed over. Their energy will concentrate in those same areas. You might feel a warmth there when there shouldn't be a warmth. You may feel a cool patch of air where there shouldn't be a cool patch of air. You may feel them brush up against you. Now, of course, your pet's going to be down, knee level, ankle. Your pet's going to be down in that area, or generally speaking, that's where you'll feel them. When I'm in my office working, I'm sitting at a desk, and I will often feel them brush up against my leg, and I will think that it's one of my own coming in here to say, hey, Mom, get off the phone. Why are you talking to those animals and not talking to us? And I'll look down, and there's nobody there. So they'll come in and brush up against me, and they'll do things that they would normally do. But again, it's very subtle. You have to be paying attention. And when I'm working, I'm in work mode, so I'm hypersensitive. I have all of my abilities wide open, and I am bringing all this information in. So we as humans, we're generally not that open, and you shouldn't be that open. You should shut it down when you're not using it because you'll get drained, and that's a whole other story. But there's a whole process to go to for psychic protection to protect yourself before any communication session, and I highly recommend you check into it before you start doing it, because I don't begin any session without a prayer and a blessing and the whole smudging and saging thing. But now humans, on the other hand, when they come through, they generally won't come around your knees or your feet like that. They're not going to be down there at knee level. What they'll usually do is they'll usually touch your face. They'll brush a hand across your hair, like you think you'll feel fingers going through your hair. You might even feel like cobwebs going across your face or your hands where there's no cobwebs. Ooh, I'm getting chills right now. You'll get chills. Chills are a sign that there's a spirit nearby. There's all kinds of ways that they can let us know that they're around. You just have to pay attention. And then if it happens, say, oh my gosh, was that you? Do it again, do it again, do it again. And you have to get excited about it, because if they try to let you know they're here and you discount it or disregard it, they won't try as hard next time because you're not going to acknowledge it. It's like you see where they would try so many times, and if you're not going to acknowledge it, they're going to get tired of trying. Yeah.
Now, I just had a thought, and I don't even know if this is viable or not, but if you say they need energy, if we see a subtle sign of some kind and we get all excited and happy and say, oh, is that you? And do it again, like you said, does that help them energetically? Can they draw from us as well?
Yes, they can. In fact, that's what they'll usually draw from. When they're trying to get a message through to you, they're going to draw from your energy. And this is really an interesting story. The majority of the time when I see spirits manifesting, human spirits, are on when I'm on an airplane.
Really?
And I want you to think about it for a minute. Spirits draw from energy, and where are emotions, and emotions create energy, and emotions are at their highest point on airplanes because people are afraid of flying and they're afraid of dying. So there's a lot of supercharged energy on an airplane, and I have seen more manifestations on airplanes than I have even in cemeteries. Isn't that interesting?
What's something that you've seen on an airplane? Can you share your experience?
Oh, my gosh. I had this one spirit that came through to me. I was on my way back from a psychic expo, and she was very insistent that I tell her son that she was okay. And it was a lady, and I told her very quietly in my mind, I'm sorry, but I don't know who your son is, and I can't help you. Because spirits know who can hear them, and they'll bug you. So you have to put up your boundaries and just tell them no. I've been shaken out of bed at like 4 o'clock in the morning before because they were ready for their session. And it's like, go away, leave me alone. Anyway, she kept bugging me. She kept showing up and like getting right in my face. And she said, you need to tell him. You need to tell my son I'm okay. And I said, I'm sorry, but I don't know who your son is, and I don't just walk up to total strangers. I don't do that. I'm very respectful that other people may not believe in what I do, and it may be against their religion or their beliefs, and so I don't intrude. I only go where I'm invited to go. And so I kept politely telling this lady, I'm sorry, I can't help you. And I said, I don't even know where he is. And she said to me, he's right there. And so I looked over my shoulder, and I saw a capital letter M floating over the head of this man, like 5 or 6 rows back. And she said, his name is Michael, and he's sitting right there. That was cool, because I was like, oh, my gosh. And as I was leaving the plane, of course, I did not go back and say anything to him. I wouldn't do that. That's not how I work. But as I was leaving the plane, I was ahead of him, but I turned around and I looked back and I could see her following him. So she was right with her son. So that was kind of cool.
Wow. That is amazing. She showed you who he was.
Yep.
That is quite incredible. Now, before we get too close to the end of the show here, can you tell us how we can find you? How do we set up a session with you?
Well, you can find me on my website. It's real easy, KarenAnderson.net. Nothing strange about the spelling, just KarenAnderson.net.
Yep.
And on the website, I have tons of information. You can see how to schedule a session. You can find out about my online course called Learn the Language of the Pets You Love. That's also available on animalcommunicationplanet.com. It is designed for beginners or those who are new to the process. And I have private mentoring, and all of that information is on my website. I'm on Facebook, of course, Karen Anderson Animal Communicator, and my books are on Amazon and Kindle, and Audible. I have The Amazing Afterlife of Animals. I finally got it up on Audible.
Oh, wow. That's great.
So that's exciting. So that's how you can find me.
Absolutely. That is fantastic. Yeah, I have both your books right here. And thank you so much for signing them for me. I will treasure these, and I'm going to wear them out. They're
good.
so good.
So.
Oh, I've really, really enjoyed both of them. So I really appreciate that. And I recommend them highly to anyone who's an animal lover, which I hope we all are, because I think it does speak well of us, those of us that are animal lovers. And I really want to thank you. MJ's given me the old 1 minute warning here.
Holding up the 1 minute.
MJ's our wonderful producer. I never thank him enough on air, and I should stop right now. He's wonderful, but I don't like to tell him that too much. You know, he gets too hard to handle. Too hard to handle.
Right.
But anyhow, thanks so much for coming on, and really appreciate it. We're going to have you back again. I hope you'll agree to come back. And I also want to thank Kevin Cook once again, my colleague and fellow host and radio host, and he recommended you to me, and he was right on. I'm going to have to give
thank you so much.
Tomorrow.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks so much for being here tonight.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight, and hope you'll be back with us next week for another edition of Night Vision Radio. Good night, everybody.
Required listening with Amazon Music.
Dad music again?
The greatest guitarist of all time.
Wait, who?
Alexa, add this song to a new playlist.
Sure, what's the new playlist name?
Jack's Intro to Classic Rock.
Adding Stepping Stone by Jimi Hendrix to Jack's Intro to Classic Rock playlist.
Amazon Music, the simplest way to listen to the music you and soon he will love. New customers start your 30-day free trial at amazonmusic.com. Renews automatically, cancel anytime.